when I was younger, yeah, you know, I was playing in bands and that kind of thing, and started off being interested in the Beatles, and then I just discovered, you know, Jimi Hendrix and that kind of thing. Initially I'd sort of dropped out of school and was kind of unemployed and pissing about and not doing anything, and then sort of got back on track and with a bit of help from my parents, sort of looking into university, and I was like, well, what are you going to do? Oh, I'll do music. You know, that's what I like. So it was kind of, that's how I started on. But yeah, mainly it was an excuse to just keep doing what I like doing most of the time, and you know, was lucky enough to be able to support myself through that. Like, I went to music college, ended up doing a master's degree in composition at the Royal College of Music in London, of all places, which was it's a bizarre place, incredibly traditional in terms of the, you know, the sort of European classical canon and whatever. Incredibly high standards, just amazingly high standards of instrumental proficiency and that kind of thing, but a very, very narrow kind of focus. So I was there doing it was a brand new course at the time, a master's degree in electroacoustic composition, which was pretty radical for them, and so we had this amazing hardware developed at IRCAM in Paris, and pretty much didn't really exist outside of IRCAM in Paris, so there was, I think there was maybe, outside of IRCAM there was maybe 10 of these boxes in Europe, and we had 3 of them, and we had this amazing studio paid for by the Rothschild family, I think, that nobody used. So we had 2 years of free studio time and amazing technology to work on. But of course, at the end of it, you know, we were sort of out on our ear and couldn't afford to buy one of these things, and also left kind of disillusioned with that whole approach to music making, I suppose. In the work that we did sort of outside of our final assessment, yeah, we did a lot of improvised work, which was kind of looked down on a little bit, and yeah, just blurring those boundaries. Also, composer, performer, and audience. That was a kind of that kind of triangle is something that I was quite interested in looking at and playing with, and also got me sort of starting to think about the wider implications of what a musical experience is, or what a, you know, what a performance experience, because your actual experience is affected by all kinds of things, and it's not necessarily that you feel like you've got to sort of compose the whole experience, you know, because you could go down the road of, you know, designing the chairs that people sit on and all that stuff. But it's maybe more a matter of making your music or your actual work to be more porous, I suppose, and to be more accepting of its environment, and I think that's something that's kind of carried through in most of my work. I think it's got to be responsive to its environment. Maybe part of why, like, I was not really interested in producing CDs or albums for a long time. All of the work that we did was live, and you had to be there, and you had to experience it. I think a lot of the work we did was kind of, if you set it out on paper, if you put in words, this is what we're going to do. For instance, Simon's going to go up onto the mountain with a mobile phone. He's going to be looking for springs. When he finds a spring, he phones back into the central space, and I send the sound through a sort of 7-minute delay system. And this kind of thing sounds rather dry and rather dull.
It actually sounds, to me, that sounds quite musical.
Yeah, a lot of it isn't really, or maybe that's. Well, I could probably think of an even more prosaic example, but you know, you put it like that, and people are like, well, what's the point of that? It generates its own complexity, as opposed to you putting in complexity.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a sort of Cagean kind of thing.
What's your favourite food? Pork chops and country ham, cream potatoes, stuff like that.
Particularly the 60s, I guess the 60s experimental music scene early minimalists like Lamont Young, big influence, Alvin Lucier, those kinds of guys. Music or art often works best when it's being done for the first time, even though, you know, a few years later somebody might revisit it and do it in some senses better. There's something about that sense of breaking new ground. You can almost hear it, and even in an old recording, it's still there. So another kind of theme that I'm interested in is sound as a physical or physiological process, or as the result, as the sort of perceptible outcome of a physical or a physiological or even a social process, rather than sound being something that's abstracted from its origins, I guess. I'll do a lot of stuff that's just improvisation based, that doesn't require rehearsals. The first thing that I did here was a thing called the Wallaby Electric Guitar Ensemble, which was, in a way, was an exercise in creating a big and complex kind of event with the minimum of time and fuss and money, and to be able to get so it's 17 guitarists, including myself, playing about a 40-minute scored, fairly fully scored piece, and in order to realise that project, I had to get the goodwill of 16 other people. I had to get their time for free, you know, all of this stuff. So that kind of shaped my approach of how to. That was my sort of building blocks from which to create the piece. A duo called Infinite Decimals with Don Rogers on bass and myself on guitar. Occasional group called Quint with Zach Keeler and Sasha Margolis. Recently been working with Paul Rogers, who's another English expat, but he's this kind of projectionist, sculptor, musician, visual artist, so we've got a couple of shows coming up. And that initial collaboration came out of literally being thrown together on a bill at Footscray Arts Centre, and we just turned up without having met each other and did something, and it actually worked really well.
Do you like that kind of thing?
I do like that kind of thing, yeah. I actually wish there was kind of more of that. You know, I actually like to be thrown into that situation, and it does surprise me that there aren't more self-described experimental musicians who are comfortable with that situation. You know, I've kind of maybe was always an admirer, if not a huge fan, of the sort of British improv scene of the 70s, the sort of improv, Derek Bailey, Evan Parker, these kinds of guys who are always really up for just being thrown into these mad combinations, and it really being about the spontaneity of being put on the spot can make for a really pretty exciting performance. And a lot of the time, if you're working with a regular group, in a way, you're trying to get to that point of inspiration in the moment and that kind of spark. It's useful to have some experience, but sometimes you know, your musical ability, whatever that means, can take the form of having a bag of tricks that you can sort of pull out when you run out of ideas, to put it kind of bluntly. And a lot of improvised, or sort of so-called improvised performance can look like that. That you know, somebody will come on with their bag of tricks, and okay, now I'm going to do this thing, and okay, what else have I got? Okay, I've got this thing, and I've got this thing, and you get more of a feeling of regurgitation rather than creation. I'm very keen on structure. I think you know, structure is a very important thing, or process. But beyond that, I like to keep my mind blank, and I do like those things where you just sort of turn up and you plug in, and you haven't even really set up the sounds on your amp or something. You don't know what's going to come out, and you just hit a note and off you go. Yeah, I do enjoy that, and I think that makes for an exciting performance. A group doesn't have to be democratic either. You know, you know, in some ways democracy can be sort of overrated, or you know, it can be hard work. But if you can go in and present people with a clear idea, then they will go with it. They will quite often go with it, and that can actually be a very nice way of working.